Think you're smart? Let's put it to the test. In this video, I'm going to tell you 3 unbelievable stories, and at the end, you'll have to guess which ones are real and which ones are made up. I'll reveal the truth at the end of the video, and I bet you won't guess all 3 right. Ever had that feeling where you did something, but you can't remember if it was yesterday or the day before? It's like losing track of time. But the story I'm about to tell you goes way beyond just forgetting. It's about a couple who got tangled up in a time mystery that's not easy to solve. Our first story is called Lost in Time. Clarence, a loyal and kind 40-year-old man, lived in the US with his 17-year-old daughter. He had separated from his wife, Jessica, years ago, but their split was peaceful and respectful. Jessica, who now lived in Canada, would sometimes visit the US to see their daughter. Despite the separation, they remained friendly and close. One ordinary day, Jessica called Clarence at 10 a.m. and said, "I'm flying to the US to see our daughter. This time, I want us to meet somewhere special." She suggested they meet at the restaurant where they'd had their first date. Clarence and his daughter were thrilled and looked forward to the reunion. On the day of the meeting, Clarence and his daughter headed to the restaurant. The weather was sunny and everything seemed normal. They sat down and waited for Jessica. Clarence started reminiscing and told his daughter, "This is the place where I first met Jessica. She was so beautiful and kind. I fell for her right away." But time passed, and Jessica still hadn't shown up. Clarence and his daughter chatted while they waited. Suddenly, the restaurant's TV caught their attention. A breaking news report said, "A passenger plane traveling from Canada to the US crashed at 9 a.m. today. All passengers on board were killed." Clarence and his daughter froze. When the flight details were announced, Clarence realized it was the same flight Jessica was on. But something didn't add up. Clarence remembered that Jessica had called him at 10 a.m. that morning, saying she was on her way to the US, but the news said the plane had crashed at 9 a.m. That meant Jessica had called him an hour after the crash. Clarence and his daughter were completely baffled. How could someone who died in a plane crash call an hour later? Was it a mistake in the news report, or was something more mysterious going on? Clarence immediately contacted the aviation authorities for more information. They confirmed that Jessica's flight had crashed at 9 a.m. and there were no survivors. Even Jessica's call records were checked, but there was no trace of a call from her at 10 a.m. Clarence's daughter recalled that Jessica's voice on the call had sounded completely normal. But now, those words felt like a haunting message from beyond. Was it really Jessica who called Clarence? Was it someone playing a cruel joke? Or maybe this whole story is just something I made up to mess with your mind. Stick around until the end of the video to find out the truth. Wouldn't it be great if you always knew what was going on with your family? But what if I showed you a handwritten note right now? Could you tell for sure which one of your family members wrote it? Our second story is about Henry Gamble, who disappeared, leaving behind only a note and a piece of paper. But here's the thing. It all comes down to whether his family can recognize the handwriting as his. This is their only hope. Our second story is called The Last Clue. It was 1982. Henry Gamble, a 35-year-old man from Washington, decided to travel to Alaska. He wanted to escape the hustle and bustle of the city and spend a few days in the wild, rugged nature of Alaska. Henry didn't have much experience in hiking or surviving in the wilderness, but this trip was a personal challenge for him. He told his friends, "I'm only going for 2 days. I want to test myself." Now, when I say he didn't have much experience, that doesn't mean he was a complete beginner or amateur. Henry packed a map, some food, a tent, and basic gear, and set off for the Alaskan mountains. He planned to enjoy nature and face its challenges alone. Back then, in 1982, staying in touch with people in remote areas was really hard, sometimes even impossible. 2 days passed, and Henry didn't return. His friends and family got worried and reported his disappearance to the police. The police immediately launched a search operation. Rescue teams with search dogs were sent to the area where Henry had planned to go. After a few hours of searching, one of the dogs started barking and digging at a specific spot on the ground. The rescue team went over and, after digging, found a metal box. When they opened it, it was empty except for a folded piece of paper inside. On the paper, it said, "It's over. I can't go on anymore." This note only made things harder for the police. First, it could have been a prank. Someone might have put that note in the box years ago as a joke. Second, the box and the note might have belonged to someone else entirely, not Henry. There was only one way to find out. The police showed the note to Henry's family and asked if the handwriting was his. The family confirmed it was definitely Henry's handwriting. After this, the police became even more determined to find Henry. As the search continued, they realized Henry had strayed from his original path and gone into a more dangerous and unknown area. After that, all traces of him suddenly disappeared. This area was full of deep valleys, glaciers, and wild animals. An examination of Henry's remaining supplies showed he had run critically low on food and water. It seemed like he had been trying to make his way back, but something had stopped him. After weeks of relentless searching, the police had to call off the operation. Harsh weather conditions, heavy snow, and the natural dangers of the area made it impossible to continue. Henry Gamble was still missing, and no trace of him was ever found. One thing the police could never figure out was why Henry had written such a vague message on that note. If he had explained his situation better, his chances of being rescued might have been higher. Another mystery was how all traces of Henry had suddenly vanished. One theory was that someone or something had taken him and erased all signs of his presence. But let's not focus on the police. Here's the question for you. Do you think Henry never returned because of natural causes? Or was he taken by something unknown? If he was taken, how did he manage to write that note? There's also another possibility. Maybe this whole story is made up. Stick with us until the end of the video to find out which stories are real and which ones are fake. Ever had that moment when you're wearing headphones and you swear someone just called your name? You take them off, look around, and realize no one's there. Was someone actually calling you, or was it just your mind playing tricks on you? Our third story is about Classroom 12. On the outskirts of Liverpool, there's an old school called King Hall. It had been around for years and seemed like a quiet, ordinary place. But behind its worn-out walls and aging classrooms, there was a dark, terrifying secret that slowly turned King Hall into one of the most mysterious spots in town. It all started on an ordinary day. Emily Brent, a bright and energetic 7th grader, always tried to get along with her friends despite her family struggles. But one morning, when the school bell rang, Emily didn't show up to class. Her friends said the last time they saw her, she was heading into Classroom 12. But when everyone went inside, Emily was gone. The police got involved right away. At first, they thought maybe Emily had left for personal reasons, but there was no trace of her. Her parents were desperate, and the students at King Hall were on edge, waiting for any news. Rumors started spreading. Some even claimed they'd seen Emily in the hallways, but no one could prove it. A few weeks later, James Hudson, the history teacher who taught in Classroom 12, started hearing strange noises. James was a logical, level-headed guy. But these sounds really got to him. It was like faint whispers, sometimes even muffled crying coming from the classroom walls. At first, he thought he was just tired or imagining things. But over time, the sounds got louder and clearer. James brought it up with the principal, but the principal brushed it off, blaming the old building's creaks and cracks. But that wasn't the end of it. A few months later, 2 other students, Laura Johnson and Ben Taylor, reported hearing whispers in Classroom 12 that sounded like Emily's voice. They said they'd stayed late at school for play rehearsal when they heard someone calling their names. They even felt like someone had touched their shoulders from behind. This got the police involved again. They searched every inch of Classroom 12, the walls, the floors, everything, but found nothing. It was like the classroom was hiding a secret no one could uncover. Things got even weirder when a letter was found in the school office. It looked like it had been written by Emily herself. In shaky handwriting, it said, "I found something in this school. Something that's haunting me, keeping me awake at night. It comes for me, chasing me. I can't take it anymore." This letter sent fear through the school. Other students started reporting strange feelings, like a heavy atmosphere in Classroom 12, the sound of invisible footsteps, and even shadows that vanished as quickly as they appeared. Eventually, the school decided to shut down Classroom 12 for good. A no-entry sign was put on the door, and students avoided it at all costs. But that wasn't the end. Every now and then, curious students or paranormal investigators would come to the school trying to uncover the mystery of Classroom 12. But no one ever found a convincing answer for Emily's disappearance or the strange noises. This is the last video of Emily at school. That's it for the stories in this episode. It's time to reveal the truth. But before we do, let's quickly recap each story. Story number 1, Lost in Time. Jessica, Clarence's ex-wife, calls him and says, "I'm flying to the US to see our daughter." Later, Clarence sees on the news that her plane crashed. The report says the crash happened at 9 a.m. But here's the big question. If the plane crashed at 9 a.m., how did Jessica call Clarence at 10 a.m.? Story number 2, The Last Clue. Henry Gamble heads into the mountains alone for a 2-day trip into the wilderness. But he never comes back. The only thing left behind was a piece of paper with the words, "It's over. I can't go on anymore." Story number 3, Classroom 12. Emily, a 7th grader, suddenly disappears. After that, strange noises and movements start happening in Classroom 12. Later, a letter is found on the principal's desk, written by Emily. It said, "I've found something in this school. Something that's haunting me, keeping me awake at night. It comes for me, chasing me. I can't take it anymore." Now, you've got 10 seconds to guess which of these stories are real and which are fake. Keep in mind, all of them could be real, all of them could be fake, or it could be a mix of both. What do you think about story number 1, Lost in Time? Do you think maybe some kind of telepathy happened across the universe and Jessica really did call Clarence? If that's what you're thinking, we fooled you. This story was made up. What about story number 2, The Last Clue? Do you think Henry Gamble really disappeared in the mountains and left that note behind? If you guessed this one was real, sorry to break it to you, but we tricked you again. This story was also made up to mess with you. And finally, story number 3, Classroom 12. Do you think Classroom 12 and Emily's disappearance are real? If you guessed this one's real, congratulations! You got it right. This story is true. How many did you guess correctly? Did you get any of them right? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon. This was episode 7 of season 1 of our show. If you're up for more challenges, check out the rest of our videos. Oh, and here's some good news. If something strange has ever happened to you, something like the stories we shared, tell us all the details in the comments, and don't forget to mention whether your story is real or not. We might feature it in one of our future videos.